The Xbox 360 generation was a time of peak zombie games popping up left and right, with hits such as Dead Space, Left 4 Dead, and Plants vs. Zombies entering the gaming scene. But today, I want to take a look at what I consider to be 5 hidden gem zombie games on the Xbox 360, titles that weren't very well received at launch, and/or games that kinda just flew below the radar. Timestamps down the description. In no particular order, the first game that I want to discuss is Lollipop Chainsaw, a cult classic third-person hack-and-slash that is one of my favorite games on the console, and it recently received a remaster on modern hardware. Where to begin with this amazing hidden gem? Maybe the silliness and creativity of this title. You play as a teenage cheerleader named Juliet Starling, who saves the world from the zombie apocalypse on her 18th birthday with a chainsaw, and she has a living decapitated head for a boyfriend. That is absolute bonkers in the best way possible. But it's also really fun, with the best hack-and-slash combat that I've ever seen, containing a large list of combos for more experienced players, but just mashing Y over and over works for a newcomer. In addition to her massive pink chainsaw that can somehow fit into a standard book bag, Juliet has many other tools at her disposal to combat the Walking Dead, such as pom-poms, a rifle attachment for her chainsaw, or nick tickets, which allow her to do a variety of things with her boyfriend's head, like spinning him around to whack zombies, or shaking his head up and down like a piggy bank and making him drop coins and lollipops, which are used for healing. In addition to having a pretty fair weapons arsenal, Juliet faces down a large variety of foes, ranging from just normal Zeds to zombie cops with guns, undead chickens, exploding zombies, fat Zeds with a large health bar, Zeeks on roller skates. The list goes on and on. And we cannot forget the amazing boss fights that this title holds, such as fighting zombie rock stars, a hippie Zed, or a giant fat Elvis zombie as a final boss, although my favorite boss is probably Zed, the first of the bunch. Graphically, the game looks pretty good and it runs well, along with having a great soundtrack and some very talented voice actors, such as Tara Strong playing Juliet or Jimmy Urine playing Zed, and every single character in this game is very memorable, as they just really stand out, and not a single named person in this amazing game is bland. This title also holds a large closet of costumes for Juliet to wear, such as being able to dress up as other characters in the game, licensed outfits from other zombie media, a variant cheerleading outfit. The list goes on and on. There are also mini games to break up the combat a bit. Some are pretty fun, some are just meh. As far as game length goes, it took me about 8-ish hours on my first go round, and I can now play it in about 6 hours. In a nutshell, the game is very enjoyable, creative, and funny, and I keep coming back to this game over and over again, and I give this title a 9.5 out of 10. Used copies run for about $40 CIB last I checked, and it's well worth the money. I believe this title was initially developed by Grasshopper Manufacturer and published by Warner Bros., but the remaster was self-published by Grasshopper. A final note is that, while I haven't played the remaster much, I think the original soundtrack does not come with the base game, and you have to pay extra to play the game with most of the original songs. The second game on my list is Rock of the Dead, a first-person rhythm-based rail shooter in which you kill zombies with the power of rock, developed by Epicenter Studios and published by UFO Interactive. This game came out during both the Guitar Hero hype and the zombie game hype of the 2010s, and this was kind of an attempt to blend the two mainstream genres, and I think it's a great game, although I know a lot of people disliked it. The story is funny, about a guy using rock music to combat the zombie apocalypse, while also trying to save a girl named Mary Beth that he has a crush on. His journeys bring him face to face with aliens behind the undead uprising, and your unnamed character has the choice to join the aliens in world domination or to defeat them with the power of rock. A very creative and humorous story in my opinion. and the guy you play as is really funny if you ask me, with various jokes and entertaining commentary. The gameplay is, well, a rhythm-based rail shooter, where you match the color patterns shown on screen to defeat foes. You also have an emergency energy blast and shield charged by defeating enemies. And while it's clearly designed to be played with an instrument controller, it supports a standard controller as well, which is how I played it. Although this took a bit of getting used to, as for one, rhythms use colors and not letters. What I mean by that is, I pretty much had to relearn the controller, as I have it memorized by the letters A, X, Y, and B, and not by the colors blue, green, red, and yellow, so I had a lot of brain farts on my first playthrough of being like, which is the red one again? Also, there are 5 colors and only 4 buttons on the controller, so orange got tossed onto the left bumper, which was never clarified, and this took me a second to figure out. Like I said, this game is clearly intended for instrument controllers, but thankfully not solely limited to them. This title does support local co-op, which can get a little chaotic as it's hard to tell which player is aiming where, but I overall had fun playing it with my wife, and one achievement is to simply play one level with another person. Game length wise, this title is about 4 hours long, but it does have an endless survival mode and some challenge modes, which bring some replayability to the table. As far as enemy variety, it's mainly focused around zombie humans, but you also fight zombie dogs and bats, in addition to things like alien robots, or one level where you fight spaceships. There are also a lot of enjoyable and creative boss fights, like taking on a giant crocodile or a monster made out of single wide trailers. The voice actors are good, although the graphics are meh. But to be fair, this title was initially planned as being a Wii exclusive, but then it never actually saw a release on the Wii for whatever reason. In conclusion, Rock of the Dead is a short but fun rhythm-based zombie rail shooter that I give a 9.4 out of 10 by my grade scale. Used copies are inexpensive last I checked, so give it a spin if you like zombie games and rock music. Going to the third game on today's list, that is Zombie Driver HD, a top-down shooter developed by Exor Studios and published by Nordic Games. I believe this title was $4.99 digitally before the 360 store closed, and I think it was worth the money. This title is short and sweet, taking maybe 5-ish hours to finish, and I recently beat it for the second time, and I must say that I enjoyed my recent playthrough more than I did my first, likely due to having some experience. This game consists of 31 missions, ranging from missions where you have to kill a bunch of Zeds, rescue survivors and bring them to a military base, boss battles, etc. And this title provides a solid selection of vehicles to complete your task with. Although I found the bus to be the best, as it holds very good base stats in addition to being able to transport more survivors than any other vehicle. Combat is overall enjoyable. You can either shoot or ram Zeeks with your set of wheels, or you can sometimes light them on fire with your afterburners in the event an undead is behind you. Ammo drops are scattered around the levels, and while there are 4 weapons you can unlock in the story, I only unlocked 2 and max upgraded them, being the machine gun and the flamethrower. On my first go-round, I purchased the other 2 weapons as well, being rockets and laser beams, but I found them to be more of a hindrance than anything else due to their small ammo reserves, so I skipped them on round 2 so that I would only receive MG rounds and flamer fuel, with the mounted machine guns being my preferable weaponry over roasting Zeds with the flamethrower. Story-wise, there is a pretty deep story, in which an unnamed science corporation accidentally starts the zombie apocalypse, and they send in mercenaries posing as the US military to try to contain the outbreak, while you play as a guy caught in all of this who just wants to help out and get paid for slaying Zeeks. Eventually, the company just decides to nuke the city, and leaves your character to die, and he hightails it out of the city, only to crash and reanimate as a zombie after being scratched by a zombie cat. Bad kitty. An interesting story in my opinion, which is told to you by NPCs you rescue, 2 cutscenes, and little blurbs of info in between levels. Each level has both a primary and a secondary objective, with optional secondary objectives giving you things like extra money, discounts on upgrades, and sometimes new rides, although a few levels mix things up and had you play as a tank or a fire truck. And I think a bulldozer on one level too. That largely sums up the story mode, I reckon. This title holds 2 additional modes. A endless survival mode, which is, well, it's what it sounds like. You battle it out against the undead hordes who grow in strength and number the longer you hold out. The third game mode is Blood Race, which combines racing and combat, both slaying Zeds and blowing up your rivals to slow their progress. As far as enemy variety goes, Zombie Driver HD has a decent roster. Walkers and runners who can throw items at your car, zombie canines, strong Zeeks who can do extra damage, fat zombies who can self-destruct near your vehicle, and they deal quite a bit of damage, zombie nest, which look disgusting, and bosses, which are zombie plant hybrids, and I enjoyed bosses more on my second go round as I was able to slay them with more ease thanks to my prior knowledge. The graphics are okay. The voice actors range from bad to good, with some sounding like they were handed a script and told to read it in the most monotone voice possible. But again, some were pretty good. The soundtrack was surprisingly enjoyable, with overall good sound effects. In conclusion, this title deserves a 8.1 out of 10 in my opinion, although I think I might have previously given it a lower score in a different video. A final note is that this title has a Red Skull as an Avatar award, which was a nice little bonus. Sadly, this title can no longer be acquired on the 360 as it is not backwards compatible, but it was re-released on the Xbox One. Batting up next as the 4th game on my list is Plants vs. Zombies Pinball for Pinball FX2, which technically is a DLC, but the base game was free and you only paid for tables that you wanted. Developed by Zen Studios and published by Microsoft, I think, this is a very solid and well-detailed table with a lot of cool features, and it is my personal favorite table by Zen Studios. They could have taken the easy way out and just tossed together an average table, but they went all in, adding things like zombies sometimes spawning in and you taking them out with the pinball to earn points and coins, although I admittedly could never quite figure out what the coins do. You also have the Sunflower, who doubles as the table announcer, and like on PopCap's classic tower defense game, she drops Sun, which gives you points when collected and can be used to unlock items, like a Squash, who will take out Zeds, or a Frozen Pea Pinball, which moves slower than just the normal pinball, making it easier to manage, and props to the devs for making the pinball a pea. Very fitting. In addition to these, sometimes good old Crazy Dave drives his store onto the table, and I think you have to hit it 3 times in a short period of time to activate it. And sadly, I could never pull this off in over 20 games, although I hit it twice on multiple occasions. A bit more about Zen's attention to detail. You have Dr. Zomboss at the end of the table, just chilling out. The thing you hit the ball with, or the plunger, is a corn cob, and chompers activate kickbacks if you have one active. Gameplay wise, well, it's pinball. The goal is to get the highest score possible without running out of balls, and this table has a pretty fun multi-ball mode, and I believe it's activated by hitting a ball into the mailbox 7 times? It's a little hard to count mid-game, but 4 hits for the word mail, and then 3 more balls to stock up a supply, and after the 3rd, the mailbox opens and they all come tumbling out. I will also praise this table for having 4 flippers instead of just 2, as some tables have. The soundtrack is the legendary OST from Plants vs. Zombies, a game I have easily sunk over 200 hours into during my time here on Earth, so this table is great for me, as I love pinball and PvZ is one of my favorite games of all time. Combine these things with Zen Studios in charge, you're gonna get a good product. 9.8 out of 10 by my grade scale. I believe this was $4.99 before the 360 store closed, and it was money well spent. And while sadly, you can no longer purchase this table on the 360, demos are still downloadable from the in-game store. So, if you have Pinball FX2 on your console, you can at least give the trial version a whirl that were played on a different device. As a side note, there is also a Plants vs. Zombies graphic novel based off Pinball. It's short and entertaining, so if you ever want to give it a spin, I suggest checking it out. Onto the final game on my list, probably the most controversial, but that is the Walking Dead Survival Instinct. Developed by Terminal Reality and published by Activision, I recently beat this title for the second time, and I enjoyed myself. I think one of the biggest reasons that this game didn't do so well was its marketing. From what I understand, it was marketed as a first-person shooter, but it's not quite that. It's more of a first-person stealth game that just happens to have guns in it, and it bears many resemblances to Ubisoft's Zombie in the way that it plays, like a heavy reliance on melee weapons, having to go for blows to the head, managing a tight inventory, etc. While sure, you can sometimes take a more guns-blazing approach and just rush your way through the levels, I don't think that's the way it was intended to be played, as A, I personally just found stealth to be more fun and satisfying, and B, firing guns should really only be a last resort, as ammo can be scarce and this title holds infinitely respawning enemies in most levels, so if you alert a horde, they're just gonna keep coming, except for things like side levels and sections designed for you to get detected. Like in one level, you're rescuing a lady's cat, and picking up the cat triggers a bunch of Zeds to pour into that room, making stealth impossible and firearms a viable option. But most of the time this game is played by trying to sneak around Zeds, or walkers as AMC likes to call them, and doing cool stealth executions, like ramming your knife into a Zed's spinal cord, or turning a Zeke around and stabbing them in the forehead, or using the crossbow to silently assassinate walkers from afar on some of the later levels. Now that being said, sometimes you'll get detected and you'll have to engage in open combat. And again, comparing Survival Instinct to Zombie, a single Zed can be a significant threat, and open combat is only a realistic option if you're facing 2 or fewer zombies, as a larger group can very easily overpower you. Anyways, open combat works one of two ways. 1. You hit a zombie in the head until they die, with weapons varying in swing speed, range, and damage. Or 2. A walker will grab you and you can either push the zombie away if you're quick enough, or you will enter grappling, where your character, Daryl, starts to stab the zombie's head with his knife while taking damage, and you have to land a blow right in the middle of the walker's head to kill it and break free, avoiding damage if you finish the Zed quickly enough. As far as enemy variety goes, not much to say. Walkers who can run if alerted to your presence, and crawlers, although this title has a fairly large weapons variety of rifles, pistols, shotguns, and a lot of melee weapons, like a machete, fire axe, hammer, etc. That largely sums up combat in a tight nutshell. You do also get the occasional grenade, which can be used to kill several Zeds at once, or you can shoot a propane tank to obliterate zombies. On to other aspects of the game. I mentioned you have an inventory. It consists of 10 slots, although you can only access 9 of them, as the hunting knife cannot be removed. And with these 9 slots, you must balance ammo, health items, weapons, gasoline, and distracting items, like flares or glass bottles. But you also have a vehicle inventory where you can stash surplus items, and new vehicles are found scattered around the game, with new rides having different stats, e.g. varying in fuel usage, likelihood to break down, inventory space, or seats for survivors, who you can pick up in levels and send them out to search for supplies while you're doing your thing. While you cannot drive the aforementioned automobiles yourself, you can choose the paths that you take to drive between levels, with paths having higher or lower chances for a breakdown and finding supplies, while also varying in fuel usage. And on a similar topic, you are sometimes presented with a choice between two levels, and for my second playthrough I chose all of the levels that I declined from my first go-round, which gave this title some replayability, as I got to see new areas, meet new characters, and do some new objectives, instead of my second playthrough being a complete copy of my first, which was really nice. Story-wise, this game is supposed to give some backstory to Daryl and Merle Dixon from The Walking Dead. I personally haven't watched a lot of the show, but I did enjoy the story of the game, so that's a plus, and I'd say you don't need to be a fan of the show to enjoy this title. Graphically, I thought this game looked pretty good in my opinion, with a very detailed world. The sound effects and soundtrack were great, and helped add in some horror vibes at times. The game overall ran well on the 360, with the only issues I remembered being once or twice a walker would very clearly see me and just stand still, not attacking. I can't really complain since the couple times this did happen, they were glitches in my favor. In conclusion, I think The Walking Dead Survival Instinct is an underrated first-person stealth zombie game, but I do understand why someone would dislike it. Say if somebody was expecting a more action-oriented zombie game like Left 4 Dead or Dead Island, it'd definitely disappoint, but as someone who bought it with no real expectations, as it was largely a blind buy, I give this game a 8.1 out of 10 by my grade scale, well worth the $7 I paid for a used copy. And yeah, 5 underrated zombie games on the Xbox 360. I'd like to hear your thoughts down in the comments. Do you think that any of these games are underrated? Did you see a game on here that you'd never heard of and now you want to try it? Tell me down below. And sorry if I ticked anyone off. That's all for me for today, folks. I hope someone enjoyed. For any newcomers here, I mostly play, review, and discuss video games, so feel free to check out some of my other content if that sounds interesting. I'll have some videos you might enjoy in the end cards if you like today's upload. And going off script here, these long form videos are really a lot of work, so if you enjoyed this video, please do leave a like, it helps me out a lot. I made easily 20 mistakes while recording this, I'm gonna have to go back and edit, plus my neighbors interrupted me 3 times while recording, so yay. Anyways, as far as our Bible verse of the day, I read from 1 Peter chapter 3, verse 8, NIV. Finally, all of you, be like-minded, be sympathetic, love one another, be compassionate and humble. And also, none of my content is AI generated, and I do not give my consent whatsoever for my voice and likeness to be altered or modified by AI in any way. Take it easy, y'all. Always remember that Jesus is King, and He loves you all very much. Peace.